and I would like to introduce our speaker for today, Reverend Katheryn Cardinal.
Thank you very much, Reverend Val. Welcome and good morning to everyone on Facebook Live. As Val just said, I just took a quick look at the back, and we have people from all over North America today, so it's really exciting to us. So welcome to those of you in Vancouver, as far west as Vancouver, as far south, I think, as Denver, Colorado. I don't know if there might be further south than that. And also we have people in East Winnipeg, Saskatoon, and Ontario. Thanks very much for being here today. So happy Easter to you. It's a wonderful opportunity to get together in this virtual world. And in lots of ways, we're getting together in a way that is even more connected than it would be if there were the 50 or 60 or 70 of us in this room, because we have actually more people online with us today. So that is one of the blessings that we have had and found in this new world, this new normal that we have, is a deeper way of connecting in different ways, because that human nature of connection is always there. So I always loved Easter, and it never occurred to me until a few years ago when someone special said to me, "You liked Easter?" Like there was all that, you know, the guy on the cross and the blood and I'm like, oh, I'd never given it that much thought. I really liked the getting together with family, the meals, the connection, and absolutely the chocolate. I love chocolate. So the chocolate and the jelly bunnies just kept me going, and it was something that I really liked. So, and I had been exposed to the Easter story. It's not that I had not had any religious training as a child. It was minimal, but it wasn't something that caused me a lot of grief. And so I was very fortunate in that I didn't have to get over something. I could move into something new and learning something new about Easter and the resurrection. But before we get there, let's just talk together about what the last 4 weeks have been like. It was 4 weeks ago today that we had our first Facebook Live session that was different than what we had tried, you know, last year. And we had about 30 people still here, and we had lots of people at home. It was our first day of our Namaste greetings. It was our first day of, we have to start being cautious and careful. And how the world has changed in that 28 days. You might remember I had the opportunity that day to speak to us about the spiritual practices that we might want to consider. And I'm going to ask you, those of you that were here and on Facebook with us that day, how are we doing with those spiritual practices? It was 3 spiritual practices we talked about that day. Taking a deep breath, so that we would be calm and centered in the moment when there seems to be things, and craziness and chaos all around us, that we can bring ourselves back to center through spiritual practice. We talked a lot about the washing hands, and I know that all of us all across the world are washing our hands more than we ever have before. My poor hands are dry, 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 because we're washing our hands for that 20 seconds, and I encouraged us to do affirmations about what we would like to have during that 20 seconds. And we talked about looking up and remembering to keep the high watch, looking up and feeling that sense of possibility, even amongst this opportunity. So my question is, how are you doing with our spiritual practices? Let's continue to do our Namaste greetings, creating peace on earth, right here during this pandemic experience. My talk today is called Broken Open. And I'll start with a quote by Elizabeth Lesser from a book called Broken Open, where she says, "How strange that the nature of life is change. Yet the nature of human beings is to resist change. And how ironic that the difficult times we fear might ruin us are the very ones that can break us open and help us blossom into who we were meant to be." We have that opportunity right now to determine who it is that we as a humanity, a world humanity, a world community, who we want to blossom into being. Wayne Dyer wrote and said, "It's not what happens to you, it's how you deal with it." So on this Easter, when we're used to getting together with many family events and sharing lots of connection with people, we have the opportunity to do that connection differently. So sometimes it's easier to say it's how you deal with it is easier to say than maybe to put into practice. So it's in those times and these times when we're having a bit more struggle with that, it's important to be able to tap into our spiritual teaching, to be able to face each day with courage, with joy, and with intention. So we're going to talk a little bit about joy and intention today. It is interesting that Easter is the end of the 40-day Lent period, and often during Lent, traditionally people give something up. And isn't it interesting how many things so many of us have given up over the last 40 days? We may be losing and feeling loss as part of that. The loss of our family dinners, of our community get-togethers, of our colleagues that we would talk to at the water cooler at work, trips to be taken, even dinners out at our favorite restaurants. All of these things are things that we may be grieving this loss in this moment. So I did think of one thing that maybe we've given up that might be a good thing that we've given up, and that is the fear of missing out. Because right now, we get to choose in our moment. There's so little, there's still lots of things online available, but not all the busyness of our day-to-day lives in our physical communities, that fear of missing out has really probably gone away. And I think it's probably allowed us, on one hand, to be quieter, to be more centered, to be more grounded, and actually feel less anxiety about the very, very busy date book that we have. So, one of the things about Lent that I believe is not the focus on what are we giving up. It's about what are we stepping into, and what is it that we want to create for ourselves? What is it that is new for ourselves? That's what the resurrection story is about. It's about the rebirth of the Christ consciousness within each one of us, and the rebirth of whatever it is in our experience that we would like to have and create more of. So I encourage each of us to think about, right here and now, what it is that we would like to create and set intentions for ourselves. There are many blogs and opportunities and people letting us know of things that we can put on. But let's think about what we can create and use this time for. Traditionally, Easter has been a time of thinking about the rebirth of the bunnies. So it's all about the fertility and the rebirth of new crops and spring and letting go of winter. We have that same experience within our life. Often we have the hibernation of winter. And now as we are into a bit more of a forced hibernation in spring, we can take this time to think about what is it that we would like to create as part of our staying home period, create for our highest good, and be intentional about our experience. Let us be intentional, let us be purposeful, and let us think about our growth and presence. So I went through a few different things and I came up with a bit of a list. So my list is about 17 things long, and you probably don't want to hear all of them, but here's a couple that are kind of neat. Go for a peace walk. We're still allowed to go out and go for a walk, so let's go for a walk and contemplate peace while we're doing that. And if we go with a friend, let's make sure that we're keeping our distance, our 2-meter experience, so that we are still being mindful of our responsibility of things that we can do to create health and wholeness in our world. Here's a neat one that I found. Make your own scavenger hunt. So this was, you list 10, 5, 15 things that you'd like to discover. Things like maybe a yellow flower, which may be easier in some places than others. Right now we still have this much snow in half of our yards anyway. It could be something like a colorful rock or a leaning tree, or maybe it could be something like a sign of joy in a window, or some evidence of spring, maybe a bud on the tree. Make your list and then go for a walk looking to see these kinds of things. There's so many other things we can do, organizing our house and decluttering, or spending more time in spiritual practice like coloring or mandalas. We can tackle some of our to-do projects. We can check out our local library. They have many, many things online. So we can learn something new. It's an opportunity potentially to look at some growth, some things that I always wanted to discover and I was curious about and didn't really have time to do. Well, maybe now is the time. There's lots of free courses online and TED Talks to listen to. And in Canada, there's a similar thing to TED Talks called Idea Cities out of Toronto, which is really interesting as well. We can do armchair tours and still travel the world. We can do creative expression. One of our practitioners has been sending me pictures of really interesting mandalas that he's painting with all sorts of different mediums. And so letting that inner child coming out to play. So whatever that creative expression might be, maybe I want to try painting, or reading, or drawing, or dancing, or doing yoga. Many of our spiritual communities all across the world are also offering many of our classes by Zoom. And you heard Reverend Val mention that we'll be starting ours, this thing called Life, starting in 2 weeks. So it's an opportunity to get together with like-minded people, to again deepen our spiritual practice, to allow us to be intentional about this time of social distancing and self-isolation. So many opportunities. So today when I was doing my research, I thought about all sorts of neat and wonderful things about Easter. And I really wanted to talk about the resurrection and Jesus and the Lamb. And the more and more I did that research, and I did a lot of it, because I just did a metaphysical Bible class with our ministry class recently, and I thought, I'm going to absolutely do that. And I'm not. I'm only going to do a little bit. Reverend Tim will be proud, I'm sure. I do think that some of the interesting things around fertility and growth and of the eggs and the lambs are just interesting. And we could do many talks about it, but I just don't feel it has the same engagement on Facebook Live as maybe as it could. So I did look up some interesting traditions though. In Finland, they're planting grass in pots and bringing those tree twigs in that are starting to bud. The decorated eggs are all about those secrets that we can find within, where we can break open this egg to find a secret. Interestingly enough, isn't that what we can always do in our own lives, about breaking open our own inner eggs to determine what it is that is our intention, our purpose, our gift to express in life. The decorating of eggs has been an ancient tradition. As far back as in Africa, they found some engraved ostrich eggs that are 60,000 years old. Isn't it interesting that we've always been drawn to something that might have a secret inside of us? And don't all of us have our own secret inside of us each and every moment? The question is, what would that be for each of us right here and right now? So to determine and to figure out what that intention is for each of us. You'll notice we have a candle lit today. So although we can't be together in a large group, we can still do some ritual together virtually. If you don't need to have a paper and pen for this, but I would like you to consider and just look at the candle, at the flame on the candle. Can you see it? We're going to have to move the candle. Okay, perfect. So, I'd like you to take a deep breath, one of those spiritual practices that we talked about. And look at the flame of the candle, giving ourselves the opportunity to honor and feel what's going on for us right here and right now. It may be grieving the loss of some of the things that we usually do or know or be in this moment. Maybe what we've had to give up either intentionally or unintentionally. Let's just be present with that feeling for the moment. Looking at that candle, the light, that light that is symbolic of the light within us. By taking this moment, it allows us to be present. Taking a deep breath, present in this moment on this Easter morning. Let's be present and feel what gives us joy and what we're grateful for right here in this moment. And then again, allowing ourselves to look at the light and feel that light that is within us. Ask ourselves the question, what is my purpose and intention for this period of time when I'm staying home and staying within myself? What is my opportunity to live an intentional and purposeful life right here during this experience? And then, if you do have a pen or paper, or you might have your phone or your computer since you're coming to us via Facebook Live, just jot down a word of gratitude or what your intention is right here in this moment. I'm just going to move that to keep us safe. So as we come back to that idea of being present, this idea of the candle, this idea of ritual and tradition, that is one of the things that Easter is about. It's about our ritual of family, our ritual of love, our ritual of the things that we do together that is this innate thing within us that allows us to be connected to people all around the world. Although Easter is generally a Christian tradition, it has many themes within many of the religions of the world. Many of the pieces of it come from the pagan tradition, and it's because of spring. The Hindus have something, the Sikhs have something, Ramadan starts at the end of the month. Many of our world religions do have something that is a festival of spring, that is about ritual, tradition, family, love, and connection. So although we're not doing connection with a meal together, we can do that virtually. I think one of the commercials I've seen on TV before all of this happened was a connection about, I think it might have been a Google ad, but I'm not sure. It might have been about Apple, where a dad was helping his daughter make a meal. It was a meal, she had a boyfriend coming, and she's making a meal, and you thought that Dad was in the room. And as they pan out, you see that Dad's actually on a phone. This idea of connection has already started before we came together where we needed to be able to do this together. The idea of gratitude is really important. And it's really nice to see many of our corporations coming together again in advertisements offering gratitude for the people that are really on the front line of this situation, giving their time and energy to allow all of us to stay healthy and safe. Something that launched 3 days ago, I saw a banner for last night, was CanadaTogether.com. And if you haven't seen that yet, it's the idea of offering support and thanks to our frontline workers by singing O Canada at noon. And the ad is absolutely hilarious because it shows all these people coming in and singing O Canada at noon. And that is this inspirational spirit that is within each one of us to allow us to find ways to connect and to be together fully and completely here and now. It is a different world, looking at the pictures of the world, looking at a picture of an airport with planes parked, looking at the streets of New York or Ottawa or Edmonton, where they're just empty, or one lone person walking along. It's a time of renewal. It's a time of rebirth. And that is what Easter is about. Sometimes as we're moving forward into our purposeful and intentional experience, we have to move the stones. So the stone of the biblical story that is moved away from the tomb is kind of those obstacles that show up for us. So what stone do you need to move, or do you want to move? Or the question is for myself, what stone do I want to move in my life to be able to have the rebirth? The symbol of the cross is really the vertical of spirit and consciousness, intersecting with the horizontal of our human experience. And each of us have our own crosses to bear as we move forward into those dreams and possibilities that are our experience. Because we have these old beliefs and old thoughts and old things that we kind of drag along with us. And so it's important for us to be able to put that aside. One other ritual or activity that I'll encourage people to think about is a releasing prayer by Marcia Sutton and Lloyd Strong. And it has some movements to it that are really like the cross within us. So we have 3 words that we would fit in. So it's I release my belief in blank. I release my need to blank. I am grateful that God is the blank that I am. Now those 3 blanks, the first one is a belief, a false belief that that is holding us back. I release my belief in lack. I release my need to withdraw, isolate, control. I am grateful God is the love, abundance, peace, joy, whatever word works for you, that I am. Sometimes by actually putting some movement into our ritual, it can embody it much more into our experience of life. And that is what the rebirth and resurrection of Easter is all about. So again, I will ask the question, what is it that gives us courage and joy and intention each day? What is our intention, and how can we live intentionally during this period of staying at home? And let's think again about the Elizabeth Lesser quote. How strange it is that the nature of life is change, yet the nature of human beings is to resist change. And how ironic that the difficult times we fear might ruin us are the very ones that can break us open and help us blossom into what and who we are meant to be. Let us blossom well. Let's blossom together. And let us remember the truth that life is good, life is awesome, and so it is.